FPL blank game week 29 is finally here. I have 7 players in my lineup that are not playing in game week 29, either because of injuries or because they don't have a fixture, but I do have 4 free transfers. In today's video, we'll have a look at what I'm planning on doing in my team. Should we be selling Cole Palmer? Should we be buying Erling Haaland? Should Salah go? Should Isak go? Should Trent go? We will cover all of that, plus some of your key questions. What should you do about captaincy in game week 29? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here as well. And it is finally here, the blank game week for the 4 teams that we have in Aston Villa and Liverpool, and Newcastle and Crystal Palace is here. Those 4 teams do not have a fixture in game week 29 as they've had doubles recently with the clash of the Carabao Cup final. That does leave some of our squads looking pretty decimated, and you can see for me, that is the case, really. So I have, in theory, 7 players that I can't field this week. Of course, Fabianski is just my backup goalkeeper, but then we have Trent, Munoz, Salah, Watkins, and Isak. 5 players from the teams that have a blank fixture. And then, of course, we have Ahmad as well, who looks like he's injured still for several more months, and he has Leicester this week. I really could have done with Ahmad not picking up the injury. This was one of the weeks that I really wanted to play him. Now, as a bit of a disclaimer, I'm recording just as the second half of Manchester United versus Arsenal is starting. Bruno Fernandes has put Manchester United 1-0 up. That means I have lost my clean sheet for Gabriel. Arsenal just don't seem to be keeping clean sheets, and it feels like it's been so long since he scored. Hopefully, this is a little jinx mid-video and you're going to get to the end and he's going to have scored and it's going to be great for my rank. I'm on a small green arrow at the moment. Of course, did have Ollie Watkins this week, but I don't have Jared Bowen and I only have Alexander Isak left playing on Monday night, and there is no Arsenal clean sheet. So I'm on a small green arrow. How big that green arrow stays, we'll have to review once we get that game out of the way, and we'll talk about it in my team selection video on Thursday. So looking at game week 29, this is my lineup at the moment. We have Pickford in goal. We currently have a back 3 of Greaves, Gabriel, and Mikalenko. We then have a midfield 3 of Palmer and Burmo and Kluivert, who's currently got the vice captaincy for me. And then we have got Chris Wood up front. But fortunately for me, I have 4 free transfers in order to be able to deal with this and probably put out a full 11 of players. So it doesn't look great on paper, but of course, with all those players on the bench, I am looking to sell some of them to put a full team out this week. Now, in terms of priority, which of them I'm prioritizing selling, I don't think I'm going to sell Salah. I just think even if he comes back in game week 30, I want him. Watkins is almost certain that he'll go. Trent is almost certain that he'll go. Ahmad, I'm almost certain that he'll go as well. And those will probably be 3 of my 4 transfers. Munoz, Salah, and Isak I plan on benching. And then I might use a transfer on someone who doesn't blank like Brian and Burmo, like Palmer or even Greaves, to try and strengthen the lineup that I've already got. Now, at time recording, there are a couple of other things to note. The first is Palmer went off after the 77th minute. It sounds like he was just ill. The form is really, really alarming as a Chelsea fan and as a Palmer owner as well. I do think that is the most obvious place to get money if you're looking to buy Haaland, and the other one is Semenyo. Lots of you will be looking to buy Semenyo, but it does sound like he went off with cramp. There is a small chance that he was holding his hamstring though when he went off. Again, we think it's cramp, but both of those players are, what happens with them in fitness is going to be a big part of my upcoming plans. There is also a lot of games midweek. Of course, we have Champions League for the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal. We have Europa League for Manchester United and Spurs. We have Europa Conference League for Chelsea as well. All of these could have a little bit of an implication of which players I'm happy to sell. Because if, for example, if Liverpool go out of the Champions League and suddenly it looks like the chances of Trent and maybe Salah being rotated further down the line when they're clashing with the Champions League is less, I might decide to hold on to them. But if they get through, it might slightly increase the chance of me selling them. So I generally think I'm going to hold on to my transfers until at least Thursday when we have some of those European games out of the way. Now, I know I'm going to lose a bit of value, but I also need a bit of fitness update on a few players as well going into the deadline. The last thing I want to do this week with no bench is buy players early, them get injured in Europe, and me having to take hits to try and sort that. So I'm not playing my free hit. I'm not playing my wild card, but I do plan on using all 4 transfers most likely, but not until probably Friday this week. So just before we have a look at some of the potential plans, to answer 3 of the big questions this week that you've already been asking on the YouTube community section and over on Twitter as well. First of all is what to do with Dango Atara. So of course he didn't start this week. Generally the plan is that we don't think he's going to start going forward as well. We had goals from pretty much and goal involvements from everyone that he could rotate with. Of course, Evan Nielsen scored, Kluivert picking up an assist as well. I'm not sure I'd sell him if it's for a -4 because, of course, there is a chance that he gets back into the starting lineup. However, if you don't own Kluivert, then Dango to Kluivert is something I'd consider for a -4. If it's going to be a -4 for someone else, there aren't many midfielders that I particularly like. You could look at someone like a Gibbs White, someone like an Alanga that you could go to as well. Semenyo, if he's available, you could go to as well. I'm a little bit more reluctant to say these are worth a -4 because although Dango is unlikely to start, he is going to get some minutes. So those players automatically have to get an attack in return for it to pay off. So Kluivert is probably the only one immediately that I think is definitely worth a -4. If you don't want Dango and also you're looking at game week 30 as well, you could look to take a hit for someone else though. Evan Nielsen is next. We're starting to look at some of those best cheap midfielders and forwards. And again, looking at Bournemouth, you have to look at Evan Nielsen, Kluivert and Semenyo as the best ones. Of course, Semenyo did go off late on and some of the apps are flagging it as an injury substitution. So we'll have to keep an eye on that for Semenyo. But Evan Nielsen along with Beto have to look like the best cheap forwards. Of course, if you don't own Chris Wood, I probably would put him above Evan Nielsen again because Evan Nielsen's unlikely to play more than about 70, 75 minutes in games at the moment. So although I do like him, there is that little bit of a downside to him. I do like Beto as another cheap one. I probably wouldn't go in on João Pedro away at Manchester City. Also, Danny Welbeck could come back into the starting lineup as well. We aren't fully certain that João Pedro keeps his place. And a similar thing for Raul Jimenez rotating with Muniz at Fulham as well. So if I was looking for forwards, Haaland I like, but he's not a cheap one. Chris Wood is there. You've got Evan Nielsen and you've got Beto as well. If you're looking at midfielders, of course, there's Kluivert, Semenyo, Gibbs White, Alanga, Minte, Mitoma are probably the ones that I would have a look at. With players returning for Arsenal, I don't think I'd be looking to buy Wanyeri anymore. There are a few other cheap ones at Wolves that you could potentially have a look at, and there's loads of options. Apart from Kluivert, none of them stand out as being absolute definite. So there is a lot of opportunity to take some differentials, punt in that midfield spot and even in that forward line if you want them as well. And talking of Erling Haaland is, do you need him for game week 29 and of course game week 30 as well with Leicester at home, with a lot of you looking to wildcard in game week 31. I would say that Haaland is probably the best captain in game week 29 just because he is a good goal scorer. Although they've not been that good recently and they play a Brighton team who have been very good and they failed to score against Nottingham Forest, recency bias says you definitely do not need Haaland. Over the course of the season, we know you do not need Haaland in your team. No, he is not essential by any means. However, with the form of someone like a Cole Palmer, with someone like a Trent not having a fixture, if you have routes to Haaland for free, yes, I would consider it. And it is probably likely I buy Erling Haaland into my team this week. Do I think he's worth the money? No. Do I think he's going to absolutely smash it over the next couple of weeks? No. So if you can't do it really easily, don't do it. There will be people who go and do it. There will be some that don't do it. I think we've just seen so far this season that it's just not worth the money, and we're seeing it recently. But if you're wildcarding 31 and you want to buy him for Brighton at home and Leicester at home in the next 2 games, that is absolutely fine. So looking at my plan for game week 29 to get more players out, I have 4 plans. And I know this is not very useful, but this is where I'm at. I have 4 plans based on what I could do, and I haven't fully decided. They are ranked in order of most likely, from plan 1 being probably 60% chance to plan 4 probably being about a 5, maybe 10% chance of happening. So plan 1 is the sort of boring. It's the most obvious. It would be to sell Trent. It would be sell Palmer, Watkins, and buy Haaland and use up all 4 of my transfers. And we'll go through that in just a moment. Plan 2 will be to sell Trent and Burmo and Watkins from -4 in order to buy Haaland. So in order to keep Palmer over Brian and Burmo, I would have to take a -4, probably to downgrade someone like Jordan Pickford. But it is all out. It does give me Isak, Salah, Palmer, and Haaland all in the same team, but it does result in a -4. Plan 3 is to use up all 4 of my transfers, get a full 11 out, but don't buy Erling Haaland, and that frees up a lot of money. It allows me to keep Isak, Palmer, Salah very easily in my lineup as well. And plan 4 is to only make 2 transfers, play with 10 players, don't buy Erling Haaland, and then take sort of 3 transfers into game week 30 after the FA Cup and have things look much clearer and be allowed to pivot. Maybe buy Erling Haaland for Leicester at home in game week 30 if it looks like I do need him for the long term. If it looks like I don't need Palmer because of the doubles and blanks or depending on the chip strategy, it would allow me to reset at a time where we'll have lots more information, but it would basically guarantee that I get a red arrow this week. So let's dive in and have a look at those. So plan 1, the obvious one, sell Trent, Palmer, Watkins, and also Ahmad as well. Bring in Haaland, probably Semenyo if he's available, Gibbs White and Kirkes, all with good fixtures this week. It probably would mean I'd put the Kamsi armband on Haaland. I do think Trent is going to go from a lot of teams. I do like the upcoming fixtures. I do think he's a good asset. But if they stay in the Champions League in particular, with Bradley coming back after the international break, I just don't think he's worth 7.5 million when you do have some really good cheap defenders in the likes of Kirkes. It could also be Aït-Nouri. It could be Gvardiol in there as well, all being good picks. Again, Semenyo and Gibbs White, I'm not guaranteeing that those would be the ones that I would go to, but it would be two midfielders in and around that price. So I would be also looking at someone like a Mitoma. I can't quite stretch up to Jared Bowen unless I don't go for Kirkes. If I go down to someone like a Nico Williams of Nottingham Forest, I could get up to a Jared Bowen, but it's this sort of combination is the most obvious. It would get me Haaland. It would get me more Bournemouth for their nice fixtures of Brentford at home, Ipswich at home. It would get me another midfielder who I could punt on, which would probably end up being Gibbs White. Looking at how that would line up for me going into game week 29, we'd have Pickford in goal, Greaves, Gabriel, Kirkes, Mikalenko. Most of them result in me playing a back four. And Burmo, Gibbs White, Kluivert, Semenyo, Haaland captain, and Chris Wood. It's a pretty nice looking lineup. The only person I'm really missing maybe is Bruno Fernandes. I don't feel like I need him. I think he's a good option and he'll be in almost every free hit team going up against Leicester. I don't think you particularly want him long term. I don't mind him as a 2-week punt if you're going to wildcard 31, but it generally, if I'm going Haaland, I don't really have the money affording to go and buy Bruno Fernandes. Next up is having a look at plan 2, which was the all-out, keeping Palmer, getting Haaland, keeping Isak, keeping Salah. So this would be, of course, Watkins to Haaland that we've spoken about. It would be Pickford to Sarr, Mbeumo to Semenyo, Ahmad to someone like Alanga, Trent down to someone cheaper than Kirkes like a Williams, and of course Watkins to Haaland for a -4. There are a few other ways that I could do this. If I didn't go for Semenyo and I went for someone like a Minte, instead of Williams, I could go up and buy someone like a Kirkes. I could try and get an Aït-Nouri in there. I could come down from Semenyo to a Minte, for example, and not have to do the goalkeeper -4 and just keep Pickford. The only benefit to doing that is the fixtures going forward for Everton are really bad, whereas the fixtures going forward for Wolves look pretty good, and Sarr is very nice and cheap. With that in mind, again, I don't know for certain with my chip strategy that I'm definitely going to wildcard in game week 31. So having someone like Sarr for the long term, although it's a -4, is more useful than having Pickford for his upcoming fixtures. This is basically, I don't think the fringe players are much different, but do I think keeping Palmer is worth taking a -4 over keeping Brian Mbeumo? Because look at the upcoming Brentford fixtures, right? Bournemouth away, Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. Like, he's not going to be on anyone wildcarding in game week 31. He's not going to be owned that much going forward. So if I don't think I'm going to wildcard in game week 31 because I still have the assistant manager chip, selling Brian Mbeumo and keeping Cole Palmer might be worthwhile. I wish I saw more from Cole Palmer today to make that slightly more appealing. I think this has probably dropped in my ranking or my percentage chance of doing it slightly just because Palmer looked a little bit off it. But this is something I'm considering for a -4, or I don't do the goalkeeper transfer this week and I maybe try and not go for Semenyo and downgrade a little bit of money elsewhere. But of course, I probably need the money from Pickford to do it. In terms of what that would look like for me, it would give me a -4 this week. Jose Sarr in goal, Mikalenko, Gabriel, Williams, Greaves, Alanga, Palmer, Kluivert, Semenyo, and of course Haaland up front with Chris Wood captaining Erling Haaland. Pretty similar to the team that we've got before, but it allows me to have Palmer in over keeping Brian Mbeumo and a few other potential downgrades like Alanga over Gibbs White and Jose Sarr over Pickford as well. Moving into plan number 3, which is the no Haaland team. It would be only using 3 of my 4 free transfers, but I wouldn't need to use up another transfer, selling someone like a Cole Palmer, an Isak, or a Salah, or an Mbeumo to free up the money for Haaland. So it would straight be Watkins, probably to Evan Nilsson. It could be to Better, but probably Evan Nilsson. Ahmad, probably to Gibbs White, and Trent to Kirkes. Again, I could go for Gvardiol over Kirkes, and that would allow me to go for Semenyo over Gibbs White. There are a few little combinations. I'm not saying that these are the exact players I'm looking to buy. It's just sort of combinations of transfers. If I decide I don't want Haaland, this is what it could look like. But you're pretty obviously seeing Watkins, Ahmad, and Trent. I'm almost certain I'm going to sell all 3 of those going into this week. Again, this would give me a back 4 this week. It would allow me to roll one of my transfers into game week 30, which could be useful. I could decide on Haaland in game week 30 as well. Pickford, Mikalenko, Gabriel, Kirkes, Greaves, Mbeumo, Palmer, Kluivert, Gibbs White, Evan Nilsson, and Chris Wood. Captaincy here is a little bit more difficult because I don't own Haaland. It would be Chris Wood probably, with Kluivert getting the vice captain. Palmer probably wouldn't. given the way that Arsenal are defending. And the final one is the more boring one. It would be the sort of take the red arrow approach. It would be Watkins to Evan Nilsson and Ahmad to either Semenyo or Gibbs White. Could do either of those because I'm not planning on buying Kirkes in this scenario. It would roll my 2 other transfers into game week 30, giving me 3 transfers in game week 30. It would guarantee I'd get a red arrow this week, right? Pickford, Mikalenko, Gabriel Greaves, and Burmo, Palmer, Clivert, Gibbs White, Chris Wood, and Evan Nilsson. I do not think that team looks that bad. It does give me 3 transfers in game week 30. It's just how important I think this week is and buying Erling Haaland. So we've got 4 possibilities here just to wrap those up. Looking at them, of course, number 1 is the most obvious. It's just to do what I think a lot of people will do. Will sell Trent, Palmer, Watkins, and buy Haaland. Plan 2 will be the sort of all-out, trying to keep in all of the premiums in Salah, Palmer, Isak, and Haaland in the same team and selling in Burmo instead. Plan number 3 would be sell Trent and Watkins along with Ahmad and don't buy Haaland. And plan 4 is just take a red arrow, play with 10 players, hope you get lucky, and reset in game week 30. And just like that, Arsenal have equalised. It is now 1-1 at time of recording. So just to go back and summarise where we're at, I have got 4 free transfers. I'm almost certain I'll use at least 3 of them. Chances are I'll use 4. There is a very small chance I just use 2, as I said in plan 4, and take a red arrow. There are lots of different plans there, but hopefully it's useful to you, depending on if you want Haaland or not. You can use plans 3 or 4. If you want Haaland, use plan 1 and 2. I don't think plan 2 will work that well. It's just I have really good team value, so I could try and stretch it to that. And if your team value is really good, maybe it's an opportunity to try and use that to your advantage and keep Palmer. But I'm not massively convinced by his form. And it's Arsenal away this week, which just doesn't look like a good fixture. If he had a better fixture this week and then Spurs at home next week, maybe it would be more beneficial, but I'm not really sure it is. But as I've said, there is Champions League on Tuesday. There's Champions League on Wednesday. There's Europa League and Europa Conference League on Thursday, which will have little implications on future transfers. If Liverpool crash out, if Spurs go out, if Chelsea go out, lots of these things might change future bits of rotation, predicted minutes in the future, predicted doubles if Spurs or Man United go out, and things like that, which might have small implications on chip strategy. I know I'm going to lose value over the next 4 days, but I'm not going to make early transfers, partly because I'm not certain on what I want to do. I need a little bit of injury update. Like Cole Palmer went off with illness, apparently. Semenyo went off with a tight hamstring, and he's involved in a lot of those transfer plans. So as much as I might want to chase value, and you might want to chase value as well, unless you are knowing for certain exactly what you're doing, I would urge a little bit of caution to wait until later on in the week, and that is my plan. At the moment, I've got this lovely 3-3-1 formation with Pickford, Greaves, Gabriel, Mikalenko, Palmer, and Burmo, Clivert with the vice-captaincy, and Wood with the captaincy. It won't look anything like that, but it's a blank game week, so we'll see. If you're looking to play your free hit this week, we will have a video out later this week discussing just free hit and whether you should do it, whether you shouldn't, what are the criteria, and what a team would look like. Also, we'll probably do a wildcard draft if you're looking to wildcard 29, which is also a potential strategy as well, in a separate video. But if you are wildcarding or free hitting or considering either of those and you have questions about it, drop it in the comment section down below and I will use them to make sure I'm covering as much of that in those videos as possible. Also, general questions are going to be really useful to me to make sure my videos this week are as useful as possible for you. So even if I don't directly respond to your question in the comments, I will be looking at them when I plan my other videos to make sure I'm answering as much, because I know there's going to be a lot going on ahead of Game Week 29, the blank. We're going to wrap it up there. I'm not certain of what I'm doing. I've got 4 plans. I need to decide on how much I want Haaland in 29, how much I want him in 30, and potentially what my chip strategy will look like after some of the European games as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this is just the nice thing to start the week. There's going to be an awful lot of content this week, so stay with it. There'll be hopefully something that answers all of your questions as well, depending on what your strategy is. We're going to cover it all. But yeah, lots of videos coming your way. We'll wrap it up there. Have a lovely evening. If you're watching this on Sunday, I should get this out in time. If not, it'll be Monday morning. Then there'll be a video pretty much Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and into the deadline stream on Saturday as well. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.